Let's bring on our guest now. I met him the other day. If you didn't know, if you haven't heard, Pasta went out to do the Minds Festival, went on a couple panels. I saw that there was an election integrity panel. I saw Destiny was on it. I said, oh, hell no. I'm not going to let him give election integrity a bad name. And I made sure that I got out there so I could push back. But to do so, Ankur, they put me on is America becoming a communist country? I was the only leftist on that panel, but I'm a common sense leftist, right? Even with our guest that's coming on, there's certain things we'll agree with. We'll agree on COVID protocols. We'll agree on elections. We probably wouldn't agree on communism. We probably wouldn't agree about the border. And we probably wouldn't agree with who he's supporting for president or moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob from InfoWars, or InfoWarsRob, excuse me. There's two Robs. There's Rob from InfoWars, and there's InfoWarsRob. You're InfoWarsRob. Thank you so much for joining the show. Please let our audience know what you got going on. You got the new show over there on InfoWars. You're over here with some common sense leftists today. This is going to be a fun show. Let us know what you're all about, my friend, and thank you for coming on.
Hey, man, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. From everything that I heard at Minds Fest, first of all, let's get into you, Pasta. I didn't consider you on the left. So common sense leftist, that means you're what they used to call in the middle. So kind of using your common sense. So that's interesting that I did not know that you were a leftist. But yes, I am InfoWarsRob, and I been at InfoWars for going on 5-6 years now, and I do have a new show called Toxic Culture. It's basically for people who are 90s babies, 2000s maybe, millennials. It's like if Alex Jones meets Joe Rogan meets Robot Chicken. It's long form podcast with little bits of culture pieces in them spliced in to keep the attention span of people nowadays. So yeah, man, just trying to bring something different to InfoWars and bringing back satire and comedy. So aside of that, I'm a main researcher, for the Alex Jones Show, assistant producer for that in the War Room, full-time editor, now a TV host, man. So I do want to thank you for bringing me on your show.
Well, man, it's a pleasure to have you on. It was great seeing you, meeting you at the event. And the reason why they call me a common sense leftist is kind of like, if you don't know, I held down Jimmy Dore's show for about 4.5, 5 months. Jimmy and Alex finally had that kind of peace agreement, had, the historical spitting the liquid on him. Jimmy Dore did. But I mean, I do call myself a common sense leftist. I'm in that same clan with Jimmy, Kim Iverson, Max Blumenthal, anti-imperialist leftists. We're old school left. The American left, which we call the synthetic left, moved away from us. They're all about the culture wars. They're all about censorship. We are freedom of speech warriors. We're free speech absolutists. We're very big on Julian Assange, freedom of a press. So that's why I think a lot of people don't realize that, the common sense leftists like me and my friend here, Mr. Patel, we have so many populist ideas, that we can share together and that will be on the same page. But let's talk about the areas that were different today, because I also think it's important, Rob, that no matter what, we avoid cancel culture, right? People used to tell me, you can't vote, you can't support or talk to a Donald Trump person. My mom was a Trumper. I used to say, what am I going to do? Take her out back and put her down like Old Yeller? This is ridiculous. Where did this come into play? Who are you supporting for president moving forward? I think a lot of people assume that since you do work for InfoWars, that automatically you're a Trump person. Are you?
Yeah.
Or are you looking elsewhere? And why Donald Trump this time?
Okay, so I have a totally different approach than most people at InfoWars, and even most people across the way here. I'm actually, what they would say, politically homeless. I'm more of in the middle. I'm not homeless. I know I have my home in the middle, and as of right now, I'm probably not going to vote, and I will tell you why. For a lot of people, like you said, they have that stigma of InfoWars is always Trump. Not everybody. That's one thing I love about this place is not everybody has to agree on a lot of things. And even Alex will hear you out and be like, okay, that's a good, interesting point. But we all know what went on in the election of 2020. And I can't, personally, I can't sit up here and show election fraud and evidence and, say, I believe that the election was stolen and it was, rigged. And then at the same time, say I'm going to go ahead and vote for the same system that hasn't been changed since then. So, I'm more of, I like to stand by my word of and the truth that I believe. And I like I said, right now, I might even write. You know what? I guess what I'm gonna write in Alex Jones for president. That's actually who I'm voting for.
That's awesome. And you saw me on stage. Obviously, it was an election integrity event. I'm at the same place as you as 2020 when it comes to that election, as far as it being fair. We were supposed to have an election section today. We didn't even get to it because we talked so much on the other sections.
Okay.
But with that being said, I would like to point something out. I want to get your opinions here, Ankur, where we have my co-host, my special co-host for today. I made it known that how I stand on the 2020 election. I think it's crazy. For me, the thing that's really, really bad is that some of the emergency techniques or the emergency rules or laws that were put into place during COVID for 2020 have now become permanent. They've become permanent in Arizona. They've become permanent in Nevada. They've become permanent in Wisconsin. Like, they were able to eliminate certain things, but they still have mass mail out ballots that go out there. No chain of custody when they mail them out. No chain of custody when they're supposed to be mailed in. What are your thoughts on what happened in 2020? Because we were part of the whole, Bernie Sanders movement. We have a lot of friends who believe that you needed to wear a mask outside and you needed to vote. They believe that ballot harvesting was something very compassionate, where you're helping get people, especially people, those out there who they believe were the most disenfranchised, that they wouldn't be able to express their votes or their opinions, that you can help them out. Where do you stand on the 2020 election? And what do you think moving forward elections are like in the United States?
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're going to encore, and we'll let you jump in right after that, Rob, because he might not be in this. We agree on elections. I think that after I came off the stage, you gave me a big smile and a hug for my opinions on elections. I wonder where Ankur is on this whole situation.
So I'm going to start off by being naive and saying I like democracy. I believe in voting. Now, how we vote and if our votes are counted and the processes that tally up our votes at the local level or the national level, state by state, each one is welcome to scrutiny. But I think I'm of the person who likes to believe that our system is somewhat working, and without enough evidence to say that those votes in that place should have been overturned and that would have made the difference. I don't think the election was stolen.
Even though Bernie Sanders, as we know, when we got out in the streets, was so overloaded with so much support.
So in the way that it was stolen, in the way that the election was stolen, it's how every election is stolen, through money, through influence, through bullying, through media narrative, through mailing out ballots. I actually like ballots being mailed out to everyone, but if you look into the next layer, you see that certain people get mailed ballots and other people don't. They get ballots mailed to the wrong house, and certain people are purged from the voting rolls because there's two Maria Garcias in different states, and now there's no Maria Garcia who can vote in either state. So I don't know where you stand with Greg Palast, but like he's done a lot of reporting and investigation and saying this part of the election system is not up to par. And I know a lot of folks this is such a tough subject to talk to with somebody who disagrees with you, because it's fundamental, right? If you don't think the electoral system is trustworthy or valid, then how can you continue to have a conversation and respect each other's political perspectives or ideas? But maybe we can try to get into that.
You want to know how to do that? And I'm going to let Rob take the microphone here. You have to prove that it's legit, just as you're saying that I have to prove that it's rigged. If I don't have a system where I can prove it's rigged, because I can't look under the car hood, I'm not allowed to look at the proprietary software, the software that counts 99% of our votes. And this is something that Alex Jones did back in the days when nobody would have Bev Harris on. Bev Harris was known as the GOAT. InfoWars, Alex Jones took on Bev Harris to talk about fractional magic, to talk about these mechanisms that steal our elections. And these mechanisms are still there today. Rob, your opinions on what we're talking about when it comes to our election system.
So I will say what the symptoms that you just kind of stated there, and you said the system is somewhat working. See, that's where everybody should already have a problem and draw the line at. The system doesn't need to be somewhat working. The system should be working like a well-greased wheel, because we've been voting since, like, how many decades is it already?
Yeah.
You know, we've been voting
Since
for going
cavemen.
on a century now.
Okay, Adam and Eve made a fucking vote. Excuse my French, right? And unfortunately, Adam
what I'm
lost.
saying.
Adam
See?
lost. Eve somehow had the tiebreaker. You take that as you will and stuff. But we've been voting since Adam and Eve. Please continue.
See? So by now it should be a well-greased wheel with no issues. So, you know, they started bringing technology into this, and that was, you know, a stick in a bicycle wheel. You know, and you said it yourself here. Every election, this election was stolen no less or no more than every other election that is stolen or has been stolen. So it's already a process. You already are knowing the symptoms, mail-in ballots. You know, you said there's people who were voting out of state, the same name. I'll add to that. There was dead
they're
voters.
not voting. They're getting taken off the rolls because
that was
either
something.
way, though. That's still election meddling. That's still election meddling. So right there, we'll just say election meddling in general. You had dead people who were voting. You know, that's case in point. You can find that everywhere. There's people's dogs were voting. You know what I'm saying? So that right there just should give a red flag. And people who are pure nationalists in the most patriotic form should be like, no, we need a system that works without any errors. And that's I'm one of those people. So
I want to piggyback on what Rob's saying here really quickly, Ankur. I'm going to ask you the question. Doesn't he have a legitimate argument here? Because this is the same argument here. If we are supposed to be the beacon of democracy, if we are supposed to be the example of a democratic process, shouldn't we have the most transparent, open system out there that is airtight, that there is no room for fraudulent error? The way we see this in Nicaragua, where the chain of custody starts at the door. They have no mail-in ballot, right? You have a day of elections. It's on a Sunday. It's a holiday. It takes you 10 minutes to vote. We have enough people to do it. They sit there just like in India, where they have way more big of a population than us, but they can have results almost by the end of the night, if not creeping into the next day. It's using our people power. Shouldn't we doesn't Rob have a legitimate point that the fact that we are supposed to be the beacon of democracy, we should have the best system out there that should be 100% certifiable by the people itself, Ankur?
That's a nice idea. I like having a perfect electoral democratic system that works and is certifiable. That's what I hope we are working towards, right? Yeah. There's the whole idea of aspiration, right? What are we working towards? Why are we engaging in civil discourse to develop a government that actually works for the people? Now, the mechanisms that we can use, including democracy, to structure the government, it'd be nice again if it was perfect. But then the few anecdotes that you mentioned in terms of dead people or dogs, I think there needs to be, again, that transparency, accountability, following up and correcting issues versus throwing the whole thing out and boycotting it. Because if you boycott an election, it definitely doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. We shouldn't boycott an election.
So there should be other options on the ballot, something that says do not agree or none of the above or something else, so that people can legitimately vote for how they feel. And I think that's where the system is most failed and flawed, is who can run for office, how much airtime do they get, what message actually gets communicated to the voters, and then in the end, why half the people don't vote in the first place because of all these flaws in the system.
They don't believe their votes counting.
That prevent it from working perfectly. But then again, as somebody who's ran for office multiple times and followed the ballot box from a precinct to where they're supposedly counting it, and then seeing the results released on the day of, there's that level of scrutiny you can follow. And at some point, you're right. You got to believe that it's legitimate or not. You got to believe that the votes are actually being tallied, or somebody's not in there with some software, some proprietary
software,
switching the numbers
in a public election
to make it look one way or the other. I that is a legitimate concern. But the last point, in terms of should we not have the most perfect electoral system, I don't think we're ever going to have. It's human made. It's taking into account so many different ideas and perspectives. It's never going to be perfect. And there are definitely some ways to improve, right? In the way that you talked about not even voting for the president, like it shows that the local electoral system does not even matter to you, right? You're not even paying attention to the more.
No, you asked me about the president. You didn't say locally.
Yeah.
Well, meaning you're not going to vote for president, and the way that maybe you will vote for local and you won't vote for president. But looking at,
I think that's how we save the country, is locally.
Yeah. Well, let Rob go jump in there real quickly and give us your thoughts real quickly too, because.
But I agree with you on the transparency part 100%. Why hasn't we talk about transparency. You can talk about the actual tactics they used at the actual voting centers. There's video evidence of that. I'm sure you've heard the movie 2000 Mules. It shows so much, so much of actual, and even if that stuff might be true, which we know it is, but even if it might be true, it goes to the other part of election meddling, and it would be censorship, because it's not like these big techs weren't censoring people's message from the people that they are their opposition. Basically, they were censoring people that didn't agree with them 100%. So I believe that we have to dial in those things. And you say it's never going to be perfect. Yeah, we're humans. It's never going to be perfect. But if you believe we went to the moon and we've been in space, and if they're landing on the moon, like, why can't we? You know how perfect and how much precision it takes for Elon to get his satellites of Starlink into the sky. So why are we having trouble with an election process that we've been doing for centuries, or let's just say since the 50s here, going on a century here? Why can't that be as perfect as a space rocket going into space? Like, it should be a lot easier.
Listen,
I love this point. My dad actually worked on space shuttle main engines, right? So I always get that one, right? It's not rocket science. Well, my dad's smart guy and all, but he had a small part in getting that space shuttle to the moon, right? Or into outer space as a chemical engineer, right? Looking at the forensics of material science. So within that level of nuance, he's one little figure getting this massive project done. In that
And
same
it sounds
way,
like the American people.
It's the same way in elections.
Right?
You have
the
many
American people are
opportunities.
your dad right now.
Say that again.
The American people are your father. Like, that's who we are, trying to make this one piece, this one big puzzle work as perfectly as possible. We all got to do our part.
And here's interesting, really quickly, because as we transition out of this part of the interview, and maybe go to a part where you might stand a little bit alone. Obviously, I think me and you, Rob, are agreeing a little bit more with Ankur. Against Ankur, he's a little bit more optimistic in the system. I think that me and you feel like it's just done. But I think also, too, to make the system better, we do have to recognize the issues. I have here the public must be heavily engaged, meaning that we have to participate, have a strict chain of custody, meaning in the purview of the people, not these companies we hire. Election day, election place, one area, your designated spot, none of these vote centers, because the vote centers just make it impossible to audit an election. Local and convenient, you got to get in, get out. They broke the system on purpose, right? They forced people into mail-in ballots because it took them hours and hours to vote. Count it where it's cast. Don't get that ballot out of there. Don't get that vote out of there. Send it somewhere else. Once it gets out the door, it can stop anywhere. The guy can go to Carl's Jr., make an exchange, get himself a double with cheese, and get a different little pin there to take back in, and the numbers are done, and no proprietary software, which we talked about. But I want to also really just end with the fact that I think there's a problem within the populist right movement, Rich. I think a lot of the audience from InfoWars would identify themselves as populist right? 2000 Mules is a good example. No, or
yeah, I mean, anybody at InfoWars, we're just in the middle, man. We're not really.
I get that, but I'm saying the majority of the people who I speak to who are InfoWars fans, the people who are going to write in Alex Jones for president, they lean towards the Donald Trump populist right movement, I'd say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the reason why, and in the areas where I think what's happening right now with the Republicans, first of all, the Republican Party that's acting for changing our elections, it's a bunch of hogwash. They're not doing anything. The populist right, they're doing the wrong things, right? 2000 Mules. The problem with 2000 Mules is they didn't talk about the ballot makers, like who has the contracts to make the ballots, right? They concentrated on the Antifa, the criminals, the ballot stuffings. Yeah, but where did they get these ballots from? And like I said, whoever signs the contract with the ballot makers, that's who the ballot makers work for, those companies. So if it's signed for Alex Padilla in California, that ballot maker works for him, and he can just print out a bunch of ballots. And with ballot harvesting, anybody can stuff the ballots. So I think that's a problem, and that's an area where Dinesh D'Souza missed, as well as, he talked about putting cameras on drop boxes. And I was like, no, you got to eliminate drop boxes. There's no room for drop boxes.
Exactly.
No drop boxes whatsoever. That's ridiculous. But also, let's move into the next transition to the next part. The populist right, where a lot of people nowadays want to start to blame immigrants. Even Alex Jones, when he was on the Jimmy Dore show, kind of insinuated that immigrants can now be changing the votes. Immigrants don't vote in mass. As an election integrity activist, I can tell you this: they are not changing any election whatsoever. We live in California. These people hide in the shadows, the majority of them. They make their money and they send it back home. What is your stance with the border situation, Rob, and the immigrants that are coming in here? At the end of the day, I want to know who's to blame for the problems at the border.
So who's to blame? It's just the government as a whole. People want to give Trump shit for, I want to build a wall, I want to build a wall, but it really doesn't matter because it never really was built. And if it's built, they just go through the holes, or the wall, the illusion that we have a wall, no matter they put it there or not, it's just an illusion because the border has been open since Obama's era. So who's to blame? It's just our government, as a whole. As far as them voting, I could see how the ballot harvesting and how before James O'Keefe left Project Veritas, they actually kind of did a sting on these people in Texas, and the lady's name was Monica Rodriguez, and she got caught going from door to door, actually convincing people to vote Democrat. And it's like they didn't really need signatures, and it was just kind of whatever thing, because they were writing ballots they were going to put in the drop box. So with that kind of being said, they could use that same tactic for migrants that are coming in. But I honestly agree with you a lot more than with them taking the time to go and vote. And I think a lot of the people you see, they say, "Oh, I love Biden. He opened the border." And when they actually get over here, and once they go through the process and realize that they're just a political pawn, they're gonna hate the government just as much as anybody in America is gonna hate the government, because they're gonna get the ball dropped. The migrants are gonna be mad at the government just like the veterans are gonna be mad at them for kicking them out of homeless shelters. They're gonna be mad for people on welfare not getting as much money, because they're just going to the migrants, especially in New York. They're getting, when Americans who are hurting right now see migrants getting $10,000 on a debit card in New York, like that creates the angrier world that we talk about. So once migrants start to lose that, and which they really are, because they can get a plane ticket anywhere, but the money's not endless for them. And once they get dropped, I think that they're going to be just as mad, having to deal with the same type of problems as normal Americans. And they're not, like you said, they're worried about making money and sending it home. And I agree with that. Look at LA. They've had how many, immigrants for so long. I'm from a little south here in San Antonio, and I always call that Little Mexico. It's like they're not really, they stick to themselves. They have big families and they take care of each other. So I can see how they could use it for voting, but as far as them as, of immigrants, I don't think they really care about our politics as much to even want to go and vote.
Well, I would say this much too as well. Like in places in Nevada, they have automatic registration when you get your driver's license. So an immigrant who gets a driver's license, now there's a ballot for him generated, and they can take that ballot, the opposing parties or whoever's playing funny games, because since it's ballot harvesting and it's legal in Nevada, they could do that. That's the only sense I see. A lot of people think that with the great replacement theory, it's about a lot of these Democratic lawmakers trying to take a bunch of immigrants in for the census to get more power within their own their own state. But the problem is that they hide in the shadows too when it comes to the census as well. And here's the thing. I don't think a lot of the immigrants that are coming across the border right now, they're hardcore Christians, hardcore Catholics. They're not going to play into the whole LGBT community and trans. They're not with the culture war issues from the left that the left have gone crazy on right now. And I would also argue the gifts that they're said to be gotten. A friend of ours, Diane Sayre, who lives in New York, she's gone there to investigate like all the free gifts that these people get. I think there's a lot of noisy rhetoric. They're putting 10 to 12 immigrants in one hotel room together and jamming them in there. Even if it's a luxury hotel, there's 10 to 12 of them, right? They have to, they're not given, they're giving a plane ticket to go wherever, but they're also cut off too as well. It's not like they're giving it a ton of things. If they get a phone, they still have to pay for that service. So I think that's a little conflated, but let's park that for a second. Let me rephrase my question for you, Rob. What is causing the flow of migration to the border, and who's to blame for that?
So yeah, it is our government, and they're giving incentives. It's really our government working with Soros to fund these people who they make advertisements. There's a caravan going to the United States, and they're going to give you a bunch of free stuff. So the same illusion that, they're feeding the American people, how these people are having the life, the time of their life in these luxury hotels, is the same lie they feed them at the beginning of their journey. And like they have these people going through the Darien Gap, and you can't deny it. There is caravans of them coming. I mean, it's been that way for years now. And as soon as Biden said surge the border, it's very hard for people not to do something in a time of hardship when and then a president of another country says surge the border when I'm president, we will give you as much, whatever you want. It's just that it's the same. It's two sides of the same coin, feeding this greased wheel of race identity and politics, and them trying to just control nations. COVID didn't work the way they wanted it to, so why not just try that with migration now? So
all right, so here's I want to comment on that, and I'm going to let Ankur then jump in. Here's my problem. This is the issue I have sometimes with some people from the populist right, or a lot of the people who are concerned with the border. Nobody mentions the fact that it's our foreign policy that is driving all these people to the border. We have over 100 bases in Latin America, and I've been to 7 Latin American countries, and I'll never forget going south in Honduras, coming from the top to Tegucigalpa, the capital, and I overlook and I see this town, and I was like, this doesn't look like the normal houses over here. This looks very well put together. And they goes, oh yeah, that's one of the bases there that has close to 1,500 American troops there. We always have these covert CIA wars going on. We support the most radical people, whether it be the Contras in Nicaragua against the Sandinistas. We're still doing it to this day. It's all about resource extraction. We keep these countries destabilized as can be, so the Western corporations can go in there with our puppet governments, extract those resources for pennies on the dollar. Look what's going on in Haiti right now in the mountains as they're taking out the iridium, which is used on the space shuttles, on our satellites. This mineral called iridium.
Talking about Haiti.
What's that?
And no one's talking about Haiti.
I know. We are. There's some common sense leftists who are.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. Just in general, the system's not talking about it.
Yeah. But what I'm talking about is the fact that why don't we understand as a society, and a lot of Democrats in America, the synthetic left, I like to call them, the fake left, the AOCs, and all these other Democrats, and nobody talks about our foreign policy in Latin America, which is driving all these people here to begin with. That we can't just close the border. We have to close the bases. If we close the bases, we stop at the resource extraction. Now, I understand there is some throwing fuel on the fire with the Soros situation, which encouraging some people to come here. But we already have the mechanism in play, which causes so much migration. Ankur, give your opinions on that before Rob can respond. And Rob, you can respond back that. But my question is to you, Rob. Why don't people realize that the foreign policy apparatus is what's causing this migration problem in the first place? It's American imperialism, baby. Go ahead, Ankur.
Yeah, no, I agree with basically everything you said in terms of our foreign policy in each of these states is unique. It's different in these nation states, but in every single one of those, not every single one to a T, but the vast super majority, we're doing things to extract wealth at the expense of the indigenous people. So then when the indigenous population is suffering poverty, the education system is collapsing, their infrastructure is not there, they're having environmental disasters because we're polluting to extract wealth, when we're putting bad guys in charge of the government so that they can continue to extract wealth on behalf of the United States, then you create this situation where maybe that first half of America's so great, we should go there. There's the land of opportunity. That, line of propaganda and narrative is also there. So then 1 + 1, the poverty that you're there versus the golden land across the border that is sometimes welcoming, is a potent combination of why and how people come. But I just like to just make the point that, both Barack Obama, President Obama, and President Biden deported as many people as President Trump and many other Republicans. It's just, again, part of the political
Obama
show.
deported more people than Donald Trump. Now, listen.
It's part of the political football that the immigrants are and how they're taking advantage of.
In LA, Sheriff Villanueva would not work with ICE.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm not working with ICE. So therefore, Donald Trump couldn't deport as many people as he wanted to. But Rob, they go over there, Western corporations, they extract their resources out of the ground. They bring them over here. And these people follow their stuff here, hoping to follow their shit and get a little trickle down when they get over here. Why is that so bad? Also, not to mention, we throw on these ridiculous IMF loans. The monetary system is down there. Yeah. It's like we're doing to ourselves. And that's the thing we didn't see from Donald Trump, the great negotiator. Go in there and negotiate. You really want to stop migration. You want to stop people coming here. Stop taking their shit. Your thoughts, Rob?
No, you're 100% right on that. And, things like Soros or, our dollar dying, the monetary system, those are the distractions from the points that you're making, is that the bigger picture is we're going into these places and taking their resources and destabilizing their country. Basically what's going on in Ukraine right now. And, it's like we go and get involved in these wars we have no business being into. And it's like, oh, wait, we actually started that. The whole Gaddafi incident, you know what I mean? Like there is the 35,000 point view is what you just said, is that we are going in, we got bases all across the world, and we are just taking their resources and, setting up nice, like you said, that house, oh, it looks nice. Oh, it's a base. We're taking their beachfront properties and no one's even talking about it. So I agree with you. Like that is the overall driver, is that, that addiction to greed of resources to, and they hide it behind the policies of, like you said, seeking asylum or foreign policy. They hide all this behind Soros and behind Surge the Border. Everything is very, very, it's a tactical plan that they've had the greased wheel for centuries, decades, and we just have to, sit here and fight about it and take it at the end of the day.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about January 6th and the people out there? I think there's a gap where a lot of people right now on the populist right who are pushing back against the Palestinian protest, saying they're pro-Hamas, saying they're terrorists, they're supporting terrorists. They're kind of falling for the same thing that the government used against the J6ers. I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was on the opposite side where Alex was. I went from the Ellipse and I drove down to the Capitol. We listened to Donald Trump's speech. The people who marched down from the Ellipse to the Capitol didn't even get into the Capitol. The Capitol was already breached by the time those people that heard the Donald Trump speech, something that a lot of people don't talk about. However, don't you feel a lot of people from the populist right, as they're defending the state of Israel, they're falling into the same trap that they used against the J6ers, that they're now have thwarted any form of due process whatsoever? Isn't that a big bear trap for a lot of people on the populist right?
It absolutely is. And I mean, there's been where, like you said, you were there on the other side. There was a lot of people there. If they're trying to make J6 paint that picture of what it was, it would have been a lot worse if that was the case, or if that was the intention, because there was way more people to where if they wanted to, they could have taken over that entire thing, and the military would have actually had to be called. But instead, they walked through the velvet line, the velvet ropes, and actually the protesters at UCLA left more trash and left more devastation at UCLA than the people at January 6th did. So, and they're just,
that wasn't their fault. They just got ripped out. They got thrown in jail, and all their stuff was left behind. You know what I'm saying? They were
sure.
They had an encampment. That's not their fault, Rob.
But the organizers, there could have been things set. If that was the case, if that was their intention, they'd been okay. That there should have been a process for them going to jail. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, you're right on that. It was a total different circumstances, but the same, it's kind of the hypocrisy is they're okay with Columbia getting taken over. They actually, broke windows and put bike locks, and the teachers were, none of that, kind of happened. There was a lot of gaslighting at the beginning of that, but once people were in there, it was a whole different story. So I don't know. I don't see how people can't see that it's a trap, like the way what you just said, a big bear trap for people to fall in. And now, it's just, it baffles my mind how they can just use the same dog tricks and people keep falling for them.
From both sides. It's like people, they just keep dragged around. Ankur, did you have anything to say about that?
No, I mean, that whole...
You don't want to talk about January 6th?
Not in particular. Like, it's just...
No, come on. A bunch of Second Amendment gun nuts were going to overtake the government, and they forgot to bring their guns that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on now.
so again, like you said, there's so many people there. Yeah. There were definitely some bad actors.
There's
some people. Sure. There was people who were attacked and whatever, a security guard who died, right?
No, Officer
So he died
Sidnick
from a
died the
heart
next
attack
day, and I know this because
days
they used
later.
my video. They stole my video and used it. This is a true story. The FBI stole my video and put the bear mace in those guys' hands. There's no picture of those guys shooting Officer Sidnick, and Officer Sidnick died the next day due to a stroke. So I don't really, there still hasn't been a lot of evidence of people showing up. And I saw a lot of people, a lot of patriots screaming at the Capitol Police, call for backup, stop these guys, these other instigators. There are people like John Sullivan, who we also interviewed in LA at Black Lives Matter rallies, cursing up Trump. He was there with a Make America Great hat on, disguised as a Trumper, right? We had a lot of these characters there, a lot of these what's his name? What was Ray's last name?
Ray Epps.
Ray Epps. Come on now.
So the reason why I didn't want to talk about this is I haven't done a lot of research or looked into it, but I do know that out of the thousands and thousands of people that were there, what is it, a few hundred, or is it now over 1,000 people have been prosecuted?
They keep arresting people left and right every day.
And so, you know, the legitimate where I would agree with you is selective prosecution, right? Depending on who is prosecuted for what reason and why is, you know, the jurisdiction of the government, and whichever government is in power can use that to benefit themselves and push their narrative and all these other things where, you know, different people can disagree with. But they didn't accomplish much with January 6th other than a big, you know, it was to some people very scary, right? To some people confusing, to some people symbolic of what is wrong with what's going on in the country for different reasons. People, different sides look at it and see completely different stories and narratives, right? And that's where I haven't looked at it from all perspectives and really feel like I'm informed enough to take. But you know, some of those people did things that they you know, like,
should
be prosecuted for, and some people were probably prosecuted
breaking and entering. It was they already have permits. There was so many things over there. I hear you, but what I'm trying to say, it's going to be used against leftists the same way it's going to be used against people on the right, and they keep falling for this stuff over and over again. They did this to a couple other people on the left, where they charged somebody for like crazy. They charged him with being a domestic terrorist, and these were leftists that were at other events.
Calling environmentalists domestic terrorists or
vegans
cows.
Are now and stuff. All right, so
Hindu fascist is a
Hindu.
You know?
I got my Hindu fascist friend over. I mean, I thought that was just so ridiculous. Rob, you got time for one more quick section? We usually keep our guests till 5:15.
All right, cool, man. Just let me know. I'm here for you.
Cool. We're going on 2 hours and 6 minutes on the show, so we're gonna wrap up soon, anyways. Okay. But let's talk about. Not so much Kanye West. Let's talk about Puff Daddy.
Yeah.
I'm following the Puff Daddy situation. Listen, the whole Epstein saga, and this was crazy because when we were at the Bernie Sanders diner, this is where a place we just went. It wasn't an actual diner. It was an organization spot for us, Rob. And when we went to the Bernie diner, and we were just starting the convo couch, I started talking about Epstein. But I wasn't allowed to talk about Epstein because it was going to hurt Hillary Clinton's chances. So you're not allowed to talk about it. But it really changed my perspective on a lot of things. It made me start looking into some of Alex Jones's claims and some of his stories. It's why when the COVID came around, I was like, oh, no. You ain't fooling me on this one. Argument for a different day. But when I looked at Epstein, I saw that there was an elite class that were using kids as currency. And this has been proven right now. I see Puff Daddy, and I see where he comes from. And people are trying to make the comparisons to Bill Cosby, whatnot, you know what I'm saying? And all this other thing. And a lot of people used to say, look at, Epstein gets to walk free, but Bill Cosby, he gets to get, persecuted right away and whatnot. He's just been released too. They changed his whole sentence. What are your thoughts on Puff Daddy? I always ask the question, is he, one, going to be thrown to the wolves by the elite and made an example of? Number two, is he going to be protected by the elites? Or maybe he has something against the elites. So persecuted or protected for Puff Daddy. Remember, he's good friends with these guys like Clive Davis, like David Geffen. These are people who are all the way up to the top, to the Epstein clan. You're Rob, your thoughts on P Diddy and what's going to happen to him?
So it really depends on how much he knows. There's people who like, Ghislaine Maxwell. She was very smart about it. The biggest child trafficker who trafficked children to nobody. There's people to nobody. So there's people who know how to play the game. Cat Williams is one person who knows how to play the game. That's why he was able to kind of predict this. And Cat Williams was going through a lot with these people, and he went to jail a lot. So, I trust Cat Williams a lot more than I do P Diddy. But I think that he's either he's going to be disappeared in two ways. He's never going to do anything again, and he's just going to sail away in the wind and be protected by these people, or he's going to get disappeared and it'll be another fallen rapper somehow. So it really depends on how big of a player he really was in the game. And I think he was a pretty big player. And I think what happened between Biggie and Pac really put him in that genre with these people. So I honestly think it's going to be more of a Weinstein type thing where they're going to say, oh, this conspiracy theory. So since there's nobody being trafficked for Epstein, they're going to kind of do the same thing with P Diddy and be like, okay, well, who, what, where? Like his wife accused him of doing this, and there is some other people who have come out, but money for these people is everything. So they're going to take a settlement or they're going to take hush money. And he's either, like I said, he's either going to disappear right in the wind or he's going to disappear like Epstein did.
Interesting. You got any final thoughts on that, Ankur?
No, I think that sounds about right to me. One of those couple options.
Yeah. All right, Rob. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can watch you. Let's put his name back up there on the screen. InfoWarsRob, thank you so much for coming on and having these conversations, bro. I love talking to people who have different ideologies. And anytime you need me to come out there to Texas to sit down there with your handsome ass, I'm there. You were also looking like a pimp at the event, all dressed up nice and swanky and stuff. I was like, I've seen this guy before. And I'm so happy that you're my first guest for Minds Fest. You weren't even participating, but you were there hanging on out. I'm so glad that you are my first guest from the event that I got to witness last weekend over there in Texas. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can support your work.
Yeah, man, I'm at Infowars.com, band.video. My actual website is just toxicculture.me. I'm at InfoWars all the time. I practically live here. So yeah, man, whenever you want to come down, you got to come do my show. And I'll talk to the other hosts, and we'll just have some conversations all day for you.
Definitely. I do appreciate the work you guys are doing over there. Even when we disagree, I love to have the conversations. I think it's kind of crazy because I remember going to a rally that was a medical freedom rally, and somebody had put up in the sky, Alex Jones was right. And I looked at a lot of people. I'm like, yeah, you got all the playing a sucker, because he was right about a lot of things. He's wrong about some stuff, Rob, and I'll debate him on him. But he's right about certain stuff. And I just think that people need to stop, calling people crazy and nuts and actually talk about the crux of what he's trying to explain and what's going on. I mean, so many things during that COVID era, for me, it was like, holy cow, this crazy son of a bitch was right. Rob from InfoWars Rob, here with us today. Thank you so much. Go check out his work. We'll see you soon, my friend.
Thanks, brother. Keep doing what you're doing, man. This is what saves America.
Thank you so much, buddy. Have a great day. All right. That was InfoWarsRob.